something is live.
We're live.
That's the first song. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We're just going to welcome one another and say how nice it is to be here with Hine Matov. Hine Matov Manai Sheberachim Gam Yachad. 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 And how about if we do the next one? Shiru Ladonai Shir Chadash. Sing unto God a new song. Shiru Ladonai Kol Haaretz. Shiru Ladonai Shir Chadash. Do that again. Shiru Ladonai Kol Haaretz. Shiru Ladonai Shir Chadash. Sing unto God all the earth a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Shiru Ladonai Kol Haaretz. Shiru Ladonai Shir Hadash. Well, I'm Rabbi Tom Goodhertz, and I'm joined here with
Rabbi Ezra Leventhal.
and we are so happy to have you here today. I can't remember what's the last time that I did Shabbat evening service with the slides behind me. So if I start singing a song that's not behind me, you just correct me. We're happy to be here tonight.
I'm running the slides. I got your back.
Glad that you braved the cold to be here with us and to be here tonight following the service for the start of our Artist in Residence weekend with Rabbi Shauna and Isaac Bringegard Bialik. So we're going to pray from the virtual Tefilah behind us, but first I want to invite Ananda to come and light our Shabbat candles up here. Amen.
If you choose to follow along in the Siddur, the page numbers are right here at the bottom corner, but everything will be on the slides.
We're going to welcome Shabbat with the singing of Lachadoti. This song was written a long time ago when the people who wrote it actually would go out into the fields and watch the setting sun and kind of process out to the field and then back to their homes. And so this is kind of a processional. Hope you catch on to the melody. Chorus goes like this. O lecha dodi likrat kala פני שבת נקבלה. הולך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, כי שמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. הולך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. הולך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה. מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. הולך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. הולך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי. אורי אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. הולך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. הולך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. And we'll rise and face the door and do this last verse and take a deep bow. And when we come back up, imagine that the spirit of Shabbat is in the room. Boi b'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'v'tzola, toch emunei עם סגולה, בואי חלה, הולך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. הולך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
You may be seated. We close out this Kabbalat Shabbat portion of our service, lead us into Ma'ariv with the Hatzi Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash me Rabbah,
Amen.
ve'alma divra, hirute ve'amlich malchute, b'chaye hon u'vyomechon, u'chaye chol Beit Yisrael, bagala, uvizman kariv, v'imeru.
Amen.
Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach, le'olam le'almaya, yitbarach, ve'yishmer v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalal shmei dekudasha
Berechu.
le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata
Tushbechata
v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'imeru
Amen. We rise for the Baruchu on the bottom of that slide.
Kind of in the middle, but yeah. All right. Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach. All together.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach
Le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed.
You may be seated. A prayer for the evening. For the one who knows the times and the seasons, changes the stars in the sky. Did anybody see Jupiter tonight? No? Oh, well, you're missing something. Well, on the way home, you got to look for it. You definitely can't miss it. It's in the sky tonight. It's as bright as it's ever going to be. And the other planets are going to rise a little bit later. So we sing together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro mariv aravim b'chokhmah poteach sharim ובתבונה משנה עתים מחליף את הזמנים ומסדר את הכוכבים במשמרותיהם ברקיע כרצונו בורא יום ולילה גולל אור מפני חושך וחושך מפני אור וחושך מפני אור ומעביר יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה Adonai Ha'ma'ariv Aravi. Now a prayer about love and Torah and wisdom. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Amcha ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shochtenu ופקומנו נשיח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגה יומם ולילה נגה יומם ולילה ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני
בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. We read together from the slide. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before we ever stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נעדר בקודש. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נעדר בקודש. נורא תהילות אוסף אליך, נורא תהילות אוסף אליך, מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע הים לפני משה, לפני משה ומרים. זה לי ענו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. יאללה לי לה 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 לה, יאללה לה 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 לה, יאללה לה יאללה לה 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 לה, יאללה לה 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 לה, יאללה לה יאללה לה לה, יאללה לה 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 לה, יאללה לה לה יאללה לה לה, יאללה לה 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 לה. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. And now let there be love and understanding among us. I think we could do this in two parts. Your side one, your side two. Let's see what happens. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu. Let there be Leshalom. Hashki, let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm. Hashkivenu Adonai
among
Eloheinu,
us.
Hashkivenu,
Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms.
And we'll do the Khatimah, the conclusion, on the next page. At the end of this prayer that asks for shelter at night and in the darkness and maybe in the dark times. We end with a prayer that God spread God's shelter of peace, God's Sukkot Shalom, over the people of Israel and over Jerusalem. And at this time of war, we ask also over all the people of the region, let peace descend. May that shelter of peace really come soon. Baruch atah, atah Adonai, haporei sukkot shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim shalom. Baruch atah, atah Adonai, haporei sukkot shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Amen.
Continue with Vishamru. Vishamru
B'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. So we come now to the Amidah, to the standing prayer. We're going to chant together the first three prayers of the Amidah together. And then I think there's going to be a beautiful slide there in the middle, with
Yes,
just a pretty picture and a vision and something to look at. But really, that's the time, actually, for any private prayer or silent prayer. We just remain standing as long as we wish while we're praying our own thoughts and thinking our own thoughts. And then when we finish the Amidah, you may be seated. So we rise for this this invitation that we find the words that are going to be our prayer tonight. Ananana svatai tifta. Ananana ufi yagi tehilatecha. Ananana Adonai. Ananana sfatai tiftach. Ananana ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor V'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Be'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei HaKol Atarav Le'Hoshia, Mashif HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayei HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Bal Geburot, Umidom Elach, Melech Memit Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah l'chayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, U'kedoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Oseh shalom bimroma, Hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru Amen. Ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 Oseh shalom bimromah Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru So now we want to offer a prayer of healing. We're going to do the Misha Beirach, which is the next slide, I think. And if you have the name of a person in your heart who you wish to mention out loud or privately, for whom we can pray tonight for healing, I invite you to say that name as I pass my hand over the congregation.
Owen Turner.
Mishabera avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishabera imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
And now,
So it's our great pleasure,
to welcome up
Isaac and Rabbi Shauna Brinjagard Bialik. We're going to switch HDMI cables, and everything is going to work. We're
the
so happy.
traditional changing of the HDMIs.
I'm going to be over here.
Okay.
Hi.
I'll be over here then. Hi. Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Shauna Brinjagard Bialik.
And I'm Isaac Brinjagard Bialik.
And you probably saw that we call what we do Paper Midrash. We're really happy to be here and share that with you this weekend. You may be wondering why comics and Torah. Well, I can tell you about the Torah piece. One of the ways that we read Torah is we always read it through the eyes of our tradition and our sages and through the lens of Jewish interpretation. And frequently, that lens is Midrash. Midrash are the stories about the stories in the Torah, the things that we teach that help us understand what the Torah is teaching us, to help us understand those values, to help us find relevance in an ancient text, and to help us find our own stories in Torah.
Now, as an artist, when I look for those stories, I find a lot of similarities with comic books, which I cut up to explore Jewish texts. Now, Now, a midrashic method is to use a secondary text when looking at the Torah, and it just so happens that comic books were created by Jewish writers and artists in the early 20th century, so a lot of the narrative structure, the use of language, the plot lines, the fights between good and evil are interestingly eerie echoes of the way that Torah tells its stories. So we're going to look through the lens of comics at Torah tonight through some of the art that I've created by cutting up comics.
So this week is Vayetze, and it has within it the story of Rachel and Leah and their relationships to each other and their relationships with Jacob. And this is a story that really calls out for Midrash. The sibling rivalry is as intense as any of the sibling rivalry in the book of Genesis. Think Cain and Abel, Isaac and Ishmael, Jacob and Esau, and the rivalry that's going to happen between Jacob's sons that sets up 400 years of slavery in Egypt. And Midrash, both classical and modern, really allow us to explore this story about relationship.
My portraits of Leah and Rachel are made out of these cut-up comics based on one midrash in particular, in which we read that the sisters are not just sisters, but are twins. In fact, there's a line where it says that they're as daughters of Laban, and because they're referenced together, that they are equal in beauty. So I have made both of my figures out of cut-up comics featuring the same person, Lois Lane, who you may know as a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, and a feminist living in a man's world doing what is traditionally seen back then as a man's job. She is also the paramour of Superman, who you may have heard of. The comics that I've used in here are not just Lois Lane to play off of the love triangle between the two sisters and Jacob. I also have some Betty and Veronica from Archie Comics. And to add a little feminist bent to reflect some more modern midrash, I have some wonderful 70s underground comics written and drawn by women that explore more modern themes. And we're going to be looking at bits and pieces of the comics as we talk about some of these midrashim tonight. For instance, there's a traditional meet cute story in a rom-com or in pop culture, and we have a similar thing in Torah, which is the meeting at the well.
Right, because it's not just Jacob and Rachel, right? This is how Isaac, through Avram's servant, is going to meet his wife, and how Moses meets his wife as well. But the biggest question I think that Midrash is trying to answer with this story is, how does Jacob not realize that he is marrying the wrong sister until the next morning? The rabbis can't figure out how he doesn't know that it's Leah and not Rachel. And they have all sorts of reasons, ranging from he must have been very drunk at the time, to some we're going to get into a little bit more detail. The rabbis use Midrash to try to explain how after 7 years of living with this family, Jacob is unable to tell the difference between the two sisters or recognize the sounds of their voices. So classical Midrash suggests that Jacob thought this might happen, and so he and Rachel came up with a plan, some signals and signs they would give each other to make sure that Lavan didn't try to trick him. But Rachel, wanting to save her sister from embarrassment, teaches Leah those signs before the wedding night. And some midrash even suggests that she stayed under their bed so that Jacob would hear her voice and not Leah's voice. Now, the rabbis noted the irony that Jacob the trickster is now being tricked. And in Breshit Rabbah, Jacob asks Leah, "How could you answer to Rachel's name?" And Leah says, "I'm just doing exactly what you did to your father when he called out for Esau and you said, 'It's me.'" Midrash suggests this is why she was unloved. And it also asks us to recognize how uncomfortable it is when someone tells us hard truths about ourselves.
Now, of course, I saw a lot of heads nodding. We all remember that story just a few weeks ago, right? Or was it even last week when Jacob approaches his father pretending to be Esau and fools Isaac? So in this piece, I have both Jacob's hand and Esau's hand coming later for the other blessing, simultaneously imposed next to each other, and you intentionally can't tell which one is Jacob and Esau. I'm emphasizing that deception, that the father of our people is the trickster in this story.
Our rabbis suggest that one of the reasons that Jacob is so either hateful right? And they say it's not just unloved, but hateful towards Leah, is because she reminds him of his own deception, of some of the worst things that he has done. However, this is also when he begins to grow up, and Jacob finally begins to understand some of the harm that he has caused. The story of our matriarchs is just as essential to the story of the Jewish people as the stories of the patriarchs. And yet often those stories are told only in relationship to their husbands and to their sons.
Now, you may have heard of something called the Bechdel test. Oh, I see some applause from Rabbi Ezra. So in the mid-'80s, a cartoonist named Alison Bechdel had a comic strip in which she explored a friend's idea that there's a way that you can determine whether a pop culture product treats men and women equally, is in fact feminist. They have 3 rules. One is that there must be 2 named women in the story who talk to each other about something other than a man. And that's it. And it is an extremely low bar that so many movies and books cannot get to. And the Torah also sometimes falls short of the Bechdel test.
Frequently falls short. And our midrash, even in classical midrash, trying to give voices to these women, also falls short. The most popular example of where we see these our matriarchs getting voices and speaking to each other about other things. You may have heard of Anita Diamant's The Red Tent. It's a book about Dinah, which is Leah's daughter, Jacob and Leah's daughter. But all of these women appear in this book, and they have more to talk about than just the men in their lives. Now, she is writing a form of midrash, because the beauty of midrash is that it is ongoing. We have been writing midrash throughout Jewish history up to and including today. And many writers try to dig deeper into some of these complicated relationships, and a lot of feminist writers dig deeper into these complicated relationships between the sisters. So, Norma Rosen imagines that the sisters continue to switch. She's referencing the part of the story where Rachel sells a night in Jacob's bed in return for some mandrakes. Rosen imagines that the sisters keep Jacob in the dark, literally, not turning on, they didn't have lights to turn on, but not illuminating the tent at all, and not letting him choose which wife he spends the night with. So that much like that first night, Jacob never knows who is in his bed. Rabbi Naomi Hyman imagines that Leah's weak eyes is actually blindness, and that Rachel orchestrates the whole thing in order to protect her sister and not leave Leah behind in Lavan's house. In her midrash, Rachel is the one who convinces both Leah and Lavan to make this switch, because that is the only way she can ensure that her sister Leah stays with her in Jacob's house, and the only way that she can protect her and get her out of Lavan's house. And finally, Rabbi Jill Hammer imagines that Leah meets Israel. That is, Jacob from the future, as in next week's portion, after he wrestles with the angel and his name is changed. In her midrash, Leah is the favorite of Lavan, and becomes good friends with Jacob during the 7 years he is working to marry Rachel. And right before the wedding, she's wandering, and she meets Jacob as Israel. That is sort of a I'm from the future ghostly apparition who tells her that she has to tell her father to make the switch, and that yes, he's going to be very angry at first, but that he knows the Israel of the future, the man that he is going to become when his name is changed, that man is going to need her as his wife. Yes, need her as his wife. So she, in Rabbi Hammer's midrash, Leah is the one who tells her father, I'm going to switch places with my sister and you'll get 7 more years. These midrashim are about agency. These modern midrashim imagine that the sisters are the ones that take action. Classical midrash paint Lavan as the bad guy. He is greedy, he switches daughters out of greed, we see, and it's consistent with the deceptions that he plays and the greed that we see within Torah. But in these modern midrash, we see Rachel and Leah claiming agency. Instead of being acted upon, they are the ones making choices. They are the ones convincing their father to make the switch. And ultimately, they are the ones helping to enact God's plan that there's going to be 12 sons to create the 12 tribes. Just like Jacob's mother, Rebekah, they understand that their role as matriarchs is in shaping the Jewish future, and they know what needs to happen. That's not to say it was easy. This strained the relationship of the sisters, and they each suffered through so much pain. Rachel with the pain of infertility, and Leah with the pain of being unloved. And we see it in some of the names that they give their children. For example, Naphtali is a play on the Hebrew word for struggle, and Rachel even says outright, a mighty rivalry I have waged with my sister and prevailed. It's these names that the sisters give their sons ensure that the sibling rivalry is going to continue into the next generation. And we all know how that story ends in Egypt. But ultimately, the sisters appear to reconcile, finding their way back to each other after Rachel finally gives birth to a son, Joseph. And we find Rachel and Leah speaking in one voice. When Jacob takes them out into the field to tell them about his plan to leave Haran and Laban behind, they speak in one voice and say, yes, we will go, agreeing to pack up and follow Jacob.
Now, I do have a portrait of Jacob as well. Here he is between his two wives. And Jacob is made up with comics featuring Superman and Clark Kent. So again, Lois Lane makes up Rachel and Leah, so it makes sense that her boyfriend and husband, Superman, makes up Jacob. Jacob is a man who struggles with identity and who he is. We're going to see next week he's going to take a new name and he has to deal with that. But he has this idea of, how do I behave in front of my brother? How do I behave in front of my father, in front of Rachel, in front of Leah? Jacob is constantly trying to figure out, am I Clark Kent or am I Superman? And I think that story resonates with us because it's about us trying to figure out who we are at any particular moment in time.
Right. This is also very much about Jacob growing up. When this portion begins, right, this is when Jacob is fleeing and he falls asleep, puts his head on a rock, and he dreams of the angels on the ladder. And in the morning he says, God was in this place and I did not know it. But he's young because he bargains with God. He says, God, if you do all of these things for me, then when I get back here, I'm going to worship just like my father and grandfather did. Aviva Zornberg notes that this journey begins at night and ends 20 years later, or in next week's portion, when he once again dreams of angels and wakes up in the morning with a new name. She describes these 20 years as a dark night of the soul because he's dealing with both Laban's deceit and Jacob's own tendency to deceive others. And it is in this space that he reckons with his own deceptions, and it's in his relationships with Rachel and Leah that he matures, and then he can finally become the patriarch he is meant to be. In classic Midrash, Jacob is also credited from this laying down at night with creating evening prayer after the sun has set. It is thought that maybe Jacob was the very first person to find God in the midst of darkness. And we continue in that tradition when we invite God's presence, when we join together to pray evening prayers. And this space becomes holy when we join together like Jacob. And we continue to find light in the midst of darkness. And certainly you are a congregation spreading light to the world and knows that that is not always the easiest thing to do. And so tonight we're going to join together to create a banner with the words above your ark. Be'orcha nir'eh or, by your light do we see light. We're going to come together and bring all of our fingerprints together collectively to create a piece of community art for the community.
Ideally, it will look like this when it's done, but right now it's just a blank white banner just behind you. We'll be working on it at Oneg, and you can see it features some of the stained glass from your historic building, as well as the top of that historic front that you can see from Jefferson. This morning we had that moment when we first saw it in real life, and it was very exciting. So we're all going to come together and make this at this Oneg Shabbat.
And we're looking forward to creating with you. May you become creators of Midrash and find your own stories in Torah. And may we all bring light into the darkness. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. And now with the ritual switching of the tables.
Switching back.
I'll grab it.
Yeah, give that back to me. That's a good idea. Okay. All right. Nope. These are past announcements. It's not the time for announcements. Artist in Residence Weekend this weekend. Please continue to come to programs. It's going to be great.
Yeah, tomorrow morning we're having our service in the main sanctuary at 10 o'clock, and then we're going to have a little kiddush after a little oneg after the service, and immediately following that we'll have our second program. Okay. So, are there other announcements, other things that we say?
People should sign up for Pacham.
Yeah, I wanted to say that. Do you want to say something about it, Jen?
Sure, I can say something about it. Go up.
So people online can hear you.
And you'll give me time to get the slideshow back to where it needs to be. Thank you.
We will be hosting Pacham, that is the women's shelter, that is a group of congregations that host women who have housing instability during the winter months from, I believe it's December 15th until the 27th. There are a lot of opportunities to help both in coming to the synagogue at night to be present with the women, preparing meals to serve at Holy Comforter, if that's something that interests you for the women. And then there's also opportunities to prepare meals for the men's shelter during the same time. There are 2 nights that we are going to be hosting the meals here, so if that feels better to you and you love vegetarian cooking, that would be a great sign up also. I think it's Christmas Eve and one other night. All the sign-ups are on the website and in the newsletter. And we also have opportunities for people who want to come in early in the morning. So if you're an early riser, also to help out in the morning a little bit.
And we really need people to sign up too, because it's 2 weeks and a lot of different things going on. So please think about that and do that together. We are going to continue or begin to conclude our service with Aleinu. Let me get to it.
I've got it up whenever you're ready.
Good. So we rise.
Please rise.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol
Lateit gedula leotzer breshit
shelo asanu kegoyei aratzot velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama shelo sam chelkeinu kachem וגורלנו ככל המונם ואנחנו קוראים משחרים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. You may be seated. We now turn our thoughts to those who are no longer with us, those who have either passed in recent months or at this time in years past. As a congregation, we remember Augusta F. Brownfield, Neil Cohen, Stella Dorman, Mark Freed, Robert Irving Gray, Justine Green, May H. Kahn, Peter Karp, Mildred Corrote, Tessa Majors, Monroe Miller, Wilson Pickering, Jerome Pincus, Nathan Shoulder, Thomas Simolchek, Arthur Teplitsky, Moses Cohen, Phyllis Eisenberg, and Josephine Felser Marcus. And we honor the Shloshim of Joyce Shotkin. If there is someone you are remembering this evening whose name you'd like to bring into our thoughts, please say their name aloud as my hand passes you.
Mourners, please rise. And if it is your custom to join the mourners, you may rise as well. Yitgadal v'yitgadash me rabba.
Amen.
Be'alma divrach hirotei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon uvyamechon uvchaye de kol beit Yisrael. Bagala v'zman kariv v'imru.
Amen.
Yehesh me rabba mevarach leolam u'me'omeya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei de kudusha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran be'alma v'imru.
Amen.
Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru.
Amen.
Osei shalom b'imroma. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Amen. So, as we heard tonight, this portion, Vayetze, begins with Jacob on the run from his brother and his family. And he comes to a place and he lies down and he dreams of a ladder. So we're going to conclude our singing tonight and our praying with Jacob's ladder with some different verses maybe. How many of you know this song?
This
I
is the
was
Pete
afraid of
Seeger
that.
and Bruce Springsteen version.
Pete
so.
Seeger wrote the words. It's an old African American spiritual, but it was kind of updated a little bit. And even if you don't know the words, and even if you don't know the melody, it's not so hard. It goes like this. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. Brothers, sisters, all. Every rung goes higher and higher. Every rung goes higher and higher. Every rung goes higher and higher. Brothers, sisters, all. We are dancing Sarah's circle. We are dancing Sarah's circle. We are dancing Sarah's circle. Brothers, sisters, brothers, all. Every new one makes us stronger. Every new one makes us stronger. Every new one makes us stronger. Sisters, brothers, all. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. Brothers, sisters, all. Shabbat shalom. Good
Shabbat
Shabbos.